What's cracking, yo? Welcome back to Boo TV. Appreciate you for stopping in. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, stay notified, and let's get into the topic for today. I want to give a big shout out to I'm Weak for Deaky and Ronald Safala for recommending this video for us right now. If you have any video recommendations, reaction videos, content in general, drop it in the comment section. Let me know. I'll take a look at it, and you can check out our reaction videos playlist for more stuff like this. All right, I have no idea what we are about to get into for this video right now. Usually you read the title of a video and you have a pretty good understanding of what you're about to get into. I don't know what we're about to get into. I don't know if we're going to be crying. I don't know if I need tissues. I don't know what the hell's going on. But with no further ado, let's get into this heartbreaking story about Larry Bird.
A fantasy game.
Let's get it.
A dream game. We've seen the league go back and forth, you know, and
That's the year I was born.
crowd is standing up.
I was a couple months old.
Bird goes up top. And a three-point field goal to Bird. 4 seconds left. He hits it. And it's all tied up again.
Bird be killing that
All right,
one-legged
he's
jumper.
going to put the ball into play. And where do we go? It's going to go to Bird. He's
There it is again.
Get it. It is good. It's a three-point field goal. And that's it. It's all over. Can you believe that? Can you believe it? He hit a three-pointer with no time on the clock. And they win the ball.
Moments like these were commonplace at the TD Garden over the course of Larry Bird's illustrious NBA career. Larry Bird, a man once revered as a god, for on the basketball court, it seemed that he was. Whether it be his penchant to humiliate opponents with his otherworldly creativity with the ball in his hands, or with his unrelenting trash talk, tales of Bird's heroics and sacrifice are that of legend in the basketball universe. However, while stories of the feats that Larry Bird accomplished on the hardwood continue to echo and reverberate throughout history, what about tales of how Larry Bird became Larry Bird? How a boy from French Lick, Indiana transformed into the man who many across the world came to love so dearly. Ladies and gentlemen, that is what we're going to be taking a look at today. The origin of Larry Bird and the man who created him.
I feel like this is a comic book origin story now.
Let's face it, a majority of NBA players don't emerge from the most ideal circumstances. As for the most part, their early lives are filled with turmoil and grief caused by the effects of crippling poverty. Exposure to such an environment at an early age oftentimes being the catalyst that fuels their desire, their need for greatness. Born into a situation that affords them with very little to lose, they're able to bet it all, swing for the fences and pray that their determination and efforts will someday pay off and provide both themselves and their families with a lifestyle that goes well beyond anything they would have previously been able to comprehend. Especially in today's world, where being elite in between the four lines found in the hardwood results in riches that most couldn't fathom even in their wildest of dreams. That, though, wasn't necessarily the case for Larry Bird. Now, don't get me wrong, his upbringing was far from anything that would be considered ideal.
Pause. I just want to say, he looks just like his mom. Holy shit.
But what was different about Bird was that his passion for the game of basketball didn't come from the thought of the riches that would come his way as a result. Since back in the days of Bird's youth, being a professional basketball player was more or less a side hustle as opposed to a lucrative career, and the NBA as a whole at the time didn't seem like it was destined to be around much longer. With the Jerry West, Wilt Chamberlains, and Bill Russells of the world all retired, the league was now faced with the problem of not having adequate enough star power to overshadow the infestation of players addicted to various illegal substances. So with all of that in mind, the question of what in the world drove Larry Bird to become the legendary player that we all know him as today becomes that much more intriguing as a result. And to find the answer to that question, you need not look any further than the people responsible for bringing him into the world in the first place, Joe and Georgia Bird. Growing up wasn't always easy for me. My family didn't have much, so we appreciated anything we had. The way I grew up was very different from most people who I have met. Very different than most people grew up is nothing short of an understatement. Born and raised in French Lick, Indiana, For the longest time, Larry Bird was unaware of the depths of financial disparity that his family faced, mostly because in the small town of French Lick, everyone was poor. Both his father and mother worked tirelessly throughout the week in order to provide for Larry and his 5 siblings. His mother as a waitress at 2 different restaurants, while his father constantly switched from working one factory job to another. With his parents working long hours throughout the day, Bird and his siblings were often left searching for ways to occupy their time outside the house, which for the longest time was done through the sport of baseball, which he and his brothers enjoyed playing on a concrete field not too far from his home, which in retrospect might not have been the best idea since errant balls typically resulted in broken windows that the Birds couldn't afford to fix. It was during these tough times, however, that Bird learned some very important life lessons that he would carry with him throughout his playing career, of which none were more important to Bird than the concept of working hard for a day's pay no matter what the circumstances, a lesson Bird would learn from his father. See, even though Joe Bird switched jobs on a regular basis, he seemed to always take pride in whatever work it was he was doing at the time. When you're doing something, make sure you see it to the end, put the finishing touches on it, then you can have something to be proud of. In essence, that is what Joe Bird told his son Larry that instilled the belief in Larry that no matter what happens throughout the course of a season, awards, accolades, milestones, it was all meaningless unless he and the Boston Celtics finished the year by winning a championship. After all, how could someone as competitive and driven as Bird ever take pride in losing? This was the guy who played through numerous injuries that would have sidelined other players, all because he wanted to see the job to completion. Unless he could not physically walk out of the court, Larry Bird was going to give you everything that he had, which happens to be another trait that Bird picked up from his father, as Larry recounts a time when his father came home from working a long day of construction aided by 3 other men. The man had to help Joe Bird not only walk home, but also take off his boots as Joe's foot had been badly mangled on the job. According to Larry, it looked like someone had taken a sledgehammer to it. Despite that though, Larry said his father Joe never complained a single time, but instead merely propped his foot up, grabbed a couple of beers, and when morning came, laced up his boots as tight as he could, and went back to work. See, Joe Bird realized that missing even a single day of work will result in his family being unable to eat that day. With his wife working 2 jobs in order to make ends meet, how could he stay home from work just because of a jacked up foot? The man had his pride after all, and he was willing to do whatever he felt was necessary in order to provide for his family. Despite his efforts though, Joe Bird was barely able to make ends meet. Most of the time after the Birds paid the bills and brought groceries for the week, they'd be lucky to have $20 left over. And even the groceries that they bought never seemed to last past the 4th day of the week. After that, the Bird siblings were forced to survive off eating sliced bread along with whatever leftover condiments they could find until their father got paid again. Eventually, the financial bind that had ensnared the Birds took a toll on their family, mainly Joe and Georgia Bird. With Joe refusing to sell a house that they could no longer afford, the prospects of any type of change in the near future looking bleak, Joe and Georgia eventually divorced, forcing Joe to give up the house and move back in with his parents. And the divorce, losing the house, and moving back in with his parents on top of the fact that he couldn't afford to pay the child support that he owed for 6 children, sent Joe Bird spiraling into a deep and dark depression. And as the holidays came around, it became clear to Larry that the funk his father was in wasn't going to end anytime soon, if at all. "I'm not going to be around much longer. No use in me living this way. You kids will be better off if I was gone." When those words traveled from the mouth of Joe Bird into the ears of his adolescent son Larry, even at a young age, Larry knew what was going to come next, even if everyone else thought Joe Bird was just trying to make another one of his melodramatic attempts at a joke. It was no joke. Having served in the Korean War, Joe Bird knew that if he died, his family would receive a lump sum of money from the government, and for a guy who felt he could no longer provide for his family, his own death seemed like the only option. One morning, not too long after, police showed up to Joe Bird's current residence at his parents' house with a warrant for his arrest due to past due child support payments. Seeing as to how small of a town French Lick was, the officers knew Joe Bird, and Joe Bird knew the officers, which is why when he asked them for an hour or 2 to get his things in order, they obliged, saying they'd be back later that day to take him in. By then though, it would be too late. After the officers left, Joe Bird used the time to say his final goodbyes to a few of the people he was closest to in town, headed to the pub for a final pint of beer, went back to his parents' home, and ended his own life in their backyard with a shotgun. His family was
Shotgun.
devastated. At the time, Larry was 19 years old and just beginning to ascend into the player who, alongside Magic Johnson, would breathe a breath of life into the exasperated NBA, making it even sadder, since had Joe Bird stuck it out just a little while longer, things would have started to turn around for both him and his family more than he could have ever imagined.
Not pushing back any tears or anything. I'm not really super emotional person, but when it comes to stuff like that, but dude, that's sad though. That's sad, especially it was already sad that he took himself out, but when it was mentioned that just shortly thereafter, Bird became one of the richest people in the world, and a legend, pro basketball player, and he could have supplied his family and the generations to come with wealth. That's sad. That's sad. And his pops, hardworking man, for sure. And that's crazy where he's like, my sacrifice is to provide for my family because I can't anymore through my hard work, through my work ethic. So I can at least give you this. Sacrifice my life, and so that you all can be well off. This is my gift to you. That's sad. That's sad. And it's sad too because, this isn't some movie, right? This isn't some fictional tale. This is a real story, and this is what people go through today on a regular basis. And the depression is real, can really put you down into a dark place, and in many ways a place of solitude and loneliness, trying to deal with it by yourself as you try to cope with it and figure things out and fight the depression. Sometimes things just keep piling on your shoulder until you can't carry it no more. You feel like you can't carry it no more. So if anybody's seeking, if anybody feels like they have depression, please, you're not alone. Seek help, and you're never alone. You're never alone. That is sad. That is sad. I didn't know that, but I don't know a lot about most of these players' personal lives and their upbringing and where they came from. And, what their parents had to endure, but I'm pretty sure that most players back in them days, their parents were hard workers. You know what I mean? Working in factories, those kind of things, trying to make ends meet for their family. And back then, a lot of families were big. People were having a lot of kids. 6, 7, 8 children in a household. Most of the time, the mother sometimes wasn't working. She was just taking care of the kids and staying at home. So at which point the dad is bringing in all the income. In this case, it sounds like both his parents were working, if I heard correctly. But as opposed to now, you have so many new kids coming up in the NBA that already have generational wealth. A lot of them have family members that played professionally, and they have been exposed to camps and all this high-quality basketball training to get where they are. You got a lot more players coming into the league that have that financial stability through generational wealth and things like that. I'm not saying that they're all spoiled brats and parents just give them money. Some of them are like that. But I do know some parents out there who've had men that moved into the NBA actually wasn't really just all willy-nilly with the money for their children. They made sure they worked for everything, which is good. That's kind of like my mentality. That's how I was raised. Like at 5 years old, not 5 years old, probably like 7 years old, up until I graduated high school, we were helping my dad work. My dad would get off work, pack up his truck. He built a shop in the garage. So when he would leave work, He'd get home, we unload the truck, start putting it in the shop, and the whole family, we got a whole assembly line going, building filters and filtration systems from scratch. Fabric, cores, webs, melting, carbon. He had a whole carbon factory. We're putting that work in. And then we do all the work. We pack the boxes up into the truck, and my dad deliver them. That was like every day. That was every day. So, hey, listen, that's the type of the cloth I'm cut from, so I get it. I understand the value of hard work and the value of $1. You know what I mean? That's a sad story. That is. I wonder if all of Larry's siblings are still alive today. That would be miraculous, because Larry's got to be like, what? He's older than Mike. Mike is in his 60s? So Larry's probably pushing 70 or so. 70-something, I'd have to imagine. Well, it's cool hearing those kind of stories. Just got me thinking, man. Dude, with the shotgun, that's where you and just put it right here, barrel. How powerful a shotgun is. That is a close range weapon. That is a burst, dude. Shotgun shells burn from what I hear. But, I mean, if you're taking it to the face, you ain't going to feel a burn. I mean, it's just lights out at that point. That's sad. That's sad. You can imagine the drive that gave Larry after how all that happened. And Larry, even though he heard his father's words, as young as he was, he understood. But you can imagine the drive of how his father, how hard he saw his dad work for so long and sacrificing himself so that the military preparations could help take care of the family. Can you imagine? That probably drove Larry even harder to be the guy who he is. It's funny when he mentioned the story about, I heard that story earlier today, about his dad coming in, looked like they went to his foot with a jackhammer, and he was like, just give me those beers, give me some beers or whatever. Or he had some beers and then left out the door or whatever the next day or something like that. I see where Larry got that from. Another video, I heard a story in one of our reaction videos where Larry had some type of foot fungus or foot disease or something. And they're like, oh, yo, we got to do all this. We got to do all this to treat it. Da, 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 da. Larry's just like, nah, you just get to work on the foot. I don't need any painkillers. You don't put me to sleep. Just give me a couple beers over there. Wrap it up. I'm going to go play basketball. They said the whole inside of his shoe was bloody after the game. Just give me them beers. He got that from his pa. That's crazy. Anyway, let me know if you heard this story before. I would love to hear your opinion. If you have any requests or ideas or recommendations for content and videos and reactions, please let me know. I would love to take a look at what you got and see if I want to do it or not. I read every comment I get, and I try my hardest to respond to everybody, especially if it warrants a response, all right? Appreciate you. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one. We out, baby.